Welcome everyone to our Wednesday webinar. Very quick introduction. My name is Dom and I'm the founder and CEO here on Wellbeing. As literally a very quick overview, so you have a bit of background as to where what we do and where we come from. On Wellbeing is a digital mental health app that is being backed by behavioural science to support employees in the workplace. We launched in October and the product is now live. If anyone wants any more information, we are running a full demonstration of the app tomorrow, so please feel free to register for that. And I'm joined by Nicola, or I suppose it's the other way around. I'm joining Nicola on her webinar, and I'm introducing Nicola. Nicola is our head of mental health and wellbeing, and came on board sort of mid last year to help us build what is now on Wellbeing. Nicola's background is massively varied. It started in physical health, has moved to mental health, and now specialises in digital health. Hence the reason she came on board to help us build the digital app on Wellbeing. So I'll pass over to Nicola, who will give you an introduction to the webinar. Please feel free to pop any questions in the chat or the Q&A. We'll ask them either as we go or at the end of the session. But please, comments, thoughts, questions, ask away. Don't be shy, and I hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Nicola.
Oh, thanks so much, Dom. Welcome, everybody. This is the third session. We're on Wednesday. We've done a session on burnout, and we've done a session on the problem with work-life balance yesterday. And today we are talking about managing hybrid working and the issues that might prevail around mental health and working from home. Please do put your thoughts or comments or experiences into the chat. Got a really exciting 20-25 minutes for you now. I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that's come out of Italy, Spain, the UK around working from home. Obviously, we've got to talk about the pandemic a little bit here. And then I'm going to talk about some research that I did with about a couple of hundred employees in 2022 to discuss their experiences of working from home as well. And then, most importantly, I'm going to give you some takeaways to apply either with yourself or if you are a people manager with your team. So in 2020, most of us had very little experience of working from home. Not all of us, some of us did work from home. And interestingly, pre-pandemic, the research around people working from home was quite positive, but that's shifted, and that interestingly shares a kind of shift with our downturn in our mental and physical health anyway since the pandemic. So most of us had no experience of it, and then we all had to do it. And what we know is that although there's been some research, the impact of working from home on our lives and our mental health is really, really poorly understood. So we've now got a rough figure of about 38% of people who are working from home or hybrid working. And yet we have a very limited and shallow body of scientific research around the impact of that on people's minds and bodies and families. So it's an area that really needs much further exploration because it seems that a lot of us are continuing to work from home. And it's really important for people managers because a lot of the people that I work with and a lot of the people that I speak to say, I'm not sure how to manage people working from home. I feel like I oscillate between heavy-handed micromanagement and basically not knowing what someone's done all week. So, we can have that discussion a little bit today as well. So most people would say, if you ask them that they prefer to work from home, they would say, it's a gift, if you like. But when you unpack that and you speak a little bit more to them, then a lot of the actual narrative and the words that they're using are not as positive. So it tends to be that what we haven't done enough is look at the variations in people and social demographics and actual houses and setups. And it's like, as managers, or organizations, we're afraid to have those conversations because we feel like maybe they're a little bit intrusive, but they're not intrusive because that is their working environment. So we have to open up these discussions a little bit more. So personality plays a massive factor in whether you're going to manage to work from home well. So we know that highly conscientious and less impulsive people are more likely to thrive at home. Whereas there's a kind of group of people who need a workplace setting because they're saying in the research that all they think they've done some days is, to answer a couple of emails and, think about what holiday they're going on. So many of us move between those two people, I'm sure. But what we want to do is, if there's that many of us working from home, we want to really try and create the best working environment we can for people so that people are thriving. So at the top of this, we need to remember, 38% of people are working from home or hybrid working. People think it's a good idea, but when we probe them a little bit further, a lot of the things they say are quite negative. The research tells us it's inconsistent around things like productivity and mental health. So we're not really sure. The research that's coming out isn't very consistent. We haven't got a very clear idea of what's happening. And we haven't looked enough at the health inequalities and the social demographics and the different setups of different groups of people and their lives and where they're actually working from. It isn't the case that everybody has a home office. People are still working at kitchen tables in really difficult environments. And in my experience, in the people that I'm working with and the organizations that I'm working with, don't feel able to properly have these conversations with people. So I think, given that we've now been working from home, for almost 4 years, we probably need to start being a little bit braver about having those conversations. Another comment I want us to think about, so we're going to introduce some ideas and we're going to come up with some kind of solutions, is that when we work from home, there's a certain loss of control because we lose a sense of kind of work metrics and markers. And so that means that we, as workers from home, have maybe a lack of certainty around our performance. And then this can create a sort of feelings of guilt and shame, which then impact our self-worth and create negative mental health patterns. So let me just repeat that back to you. When we work from home, there's still, for many of us, a sort of feeling of uncertainty and a feeling like the normal work metrics and kind of markers around us aren't there. So then we're not sure how well we're performing. So then we feel some guilt and shame. And then that's leading us into some negative mental health patterns. So these are the things we need to think about as managers, as organizations, to support people who are working from home. So what are some of the key things we need to think about? The home setup, we've just talked about that, that we're slightly afraid to have that conversation, and we shouldn't be. The issue of productivity, like what actually is it? Because the research is very inconsistent on the levels of productivity when we're at home. The fact that when we're at home, we have what was called a lack of domain specificities. So normally in our life, we have, a work, a leisure space, a space with the children, we have different spaces that we move in and out of. When we work from home, some of those become compounded, and then our boundaries kind of are blurred. Now, yesterday, if you heard me talk about the problem of work-life balance, I said that's a good thing. We're only one person. Let's rub these boundaries out. But that doesn't mean that it might not lead to some confusion and some difficulty in work practice that we need to consider. We need to talk about techno stress. So that is the feeling of being tied to the computer. Lots of research from 2020 and 2021 has come out with that as a key issue. Back-to-back meetings. I know this will not be of any surprise to you guys listening today. That techno stress, that constant one thing to the next and feeling tied to the computer. On a positive note, working from home offers us some flexibility. So people thrive when they feel in control of their time, people don't fare so well when they feel like every minute of their life is dictated to. So having a little bit of flexibility in our time at home is a positive thing. You know, we're able to do home chores when we work at home. So put washing on, empty a dishwasher in, you know, a 5-minute break. Is that positive or is that a negative thing? And I think we'd probably get mixed responses to that. And then other things that come out from the research are MSK problems, so musculoskeletal problems, and that's because lots of us do not have an office set up with a chair and a desk that's ergonomically sound. And you know, these are key issues that still people don't really pick apart, I think. And then really importantly, you might think that working from home enables us to be more physically active. The research suggests, and please do pop into the chat what you think here. The research suggests that working from home actually means that we're less physically active. And that is probably because most people struggle to be physically active. So that won't be a surprise to you. You know, 3/4 of our population are not active enough to create health benefits. So it's hard enough to be active to motivate ourselves to move more. So if we suddenly take out the commute, the moving around the office, the going from one building to another, we're withdrawing a lot of physical activity from the day, and that's not good for mental or physical health. So I've just highlighted lots of little things for us to start to think about. Now I'm going to talk about actual research that I did, and then I'm going to come up with some solutions. And again, remember all these sessions, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll put the kind of recap on them on our LinkedIn pages next week. If you want any more information, please just get in touch and we can talk a little bit more about these. So actual research that was done with a couple of hundred European employees who were working from home. What did we find? Well, the quantitative, the number crunching looked really positive. Then when we asked them to give some words, they were a little bit more negative. So that's confusing, isn't it? Because they're saying two different things there, which I think reflects the whole story around working from home. It's really mixed, and we're mixed in our own minds about it, if you like. So 70% of respondents said they felt it was a positive thing. 30% were not sure about boundaries. They felt that was challenging when they worked from home. 60% felt more capable and 20% felt less. Obviously, some were uncertain. 80%, that's most people, isn't it, really miss social interaction. So we can't, you know, we can't take away. A virtually doesn't really cut it, does it? Going back to what we just said about physical activity, half the people felt healthier for being at home, and around half felt unhealthier. So you know, I'd be interested to hear what you guys thought. But then so on the most part, that's kind of positive. Most people in those number crunching answers said it was quite positive. But then when we look at the words people used, they said they didn't take breaks. There wasn't enough time to test ideas. They felt isolated. They felt it was more stressful to deal with a challenge remotely than if they were in an office. They said they had very little opportunity to be physically active. And we know the impact that has on mental health. They said that they felt their mental health had suffered as a result, and that they felt more overwhelmed at home than they were in an office. So again, I think that, you know, there's so many things we have to think about here, and how do we begin to answer them all? If everybody's confused in the first place, how do we as managers start to you know, help people? One more point I want to make before we start to come up with some solutions here is a very key topic close to all of our hearts, and that is the issue of disruptions. So Johan Hari, I don't know if you've ever heard of this author. He's well known for writing in the kind of mental health and psychology sphere. Wrote a very good book a couple of years ago called Stolen Focus, and he talks about the way that the constant digital interruptions on our phones and our screens have really impacted our attention span, so that we're able to actually focus for less than 3 minutes. And actually, if you read some stats, a lot of stats say even less than this. So we are constantly being notified, and in the home setting, probably a little bit more so than maybe you would in an office setting, where you might turn those notifications off. Now, that obviously impacts our flow and our focus, and it does impact our work. We can't deny it. We can't deny it. And that all, it's like the guilty secret that everyone's carrying around. So everyone's also feeling guilty about maybe how much they look at their phone, or how much they're flipping from their work to look at something online. And so that's another area that's causing people some concern while they work from home. So in the last 20 minutes, I think what we've uncovered is a really mixed bag when it comes to working from home. And I think hopefully what I've also illustrated is the complexity of factors that are at play. It isn't a simple fact of, are you working from home, yes or no? It's quite complicated, and we need to take a little bit more care if we want to support our colleagues, both from a productivity point of view and a mental health perspective. Okay, so some of the things that we can do are to, I think, encourage the flexibility. That's something that working from home gives. So allow people to feel that and feel relieved about that, and not to feel worried or guilty about it. We must encourage movement, and that is where senior managers and managers have to encourage breaks from the screen and physical movement, because that is transformative for mental health, for focus, for concentration. I think we need to start to encourage, when working from home, to have like focus time, where we maybe say, well, there's no distractions, and then there's more of a set time for kind of interactions and meetings. And obviously this very much depends on the nature of your work. So allowing people to believe that the flexibility is okay, encouraging opportunities for movement, empowering people with setting some boundaries between times that have no distraction and times that maybe have more distractions. Think about what can be done without a screen. I know most of us will think nothing, but when can the old-fashioned pen and paper come into play? When can we have a walk and talk meeting on a phone, not looking at a screen? This techno stress is very real, and when we work from home, it's compounded. So how can we encourage colleagues to do things without a screen? How can we lead from the top with that? What can we do without a screen? What can we do without a screen? Have a conversation about what productivity actually looks like, so that everybody knows, I suppose, what's expected of them, because that fear and guilt when people are at home around, losing the metrics of what's enough, seems to be worsened when people are at home. So encouraging self-management of your space and work, taking pride in your workspace, inquiring about what that space looks like. How can you help the person to make it a better space? And I think sort of unpicking some of the guilt, shame, and secrecy around someone that maybe is working from the kitchen table, and starting to say, how can we make that kitchen table work better for you? And that, another point I want to make, is building self-confidence and self-esteem whilst working from home, because that, for some people, is something that's dropped off a little bit. So movement breaks and walking breaks, focusing on a flow period and then a more distracted period in the day, management of the space and the time, encouraging people to feel some self-esteem and self-confidence when working from home, encouraging people to it's more difficult, I think. We can get more overwhelmed on our own, so perhaps looking at checking in with what's important now, checking in more regularly. But then again, we don't want to tip over into the techno stress of having too many meetings. there's massive variation in demographics of people, of culture, of gender, of age group, of jobs. So there isn't a one size fits all answer here, but there are lots of issues that need to be considered, and there is a lot of conversation that has to be had around solutions. So I suppose, if nothing else, one of the key things to take away from today is that it's complex, the research is inconsistent, and I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few of your colleagues are still struggling with working from home, but are masking that, because they don't necessarily want to go back in the office. So they don't want to say that they're not managing at home, but we need to encourage more open conversations about what the space looks like, how people are feeling in terms of the distractions, in terms of self-worth, in terms of productivity, and what can we do to support that. I can't see any chat messages right now, but Dom, any thoughts about working from home? I know you and I both work from home and both don't love it, do we? We
Yeah,
work
it's an
from home
interesting one.
sometimes. It's a
Yeah,
really interesting one.
because it's obviously massively convenient, and I think that's what people enjoy. And I use we're a small team. For those that don't know, we've got 11 staff, and they're all all over the country. We've got the office is in the northwest, and we've got, for example, our design is based in Cornwall. So realistically, expecting him to come into the office any more than probably once a quarter is unreasonable. But it suits him down to the ground. He's got a family. He moved to Cornwall expecting he was going to work from home, and he loves it. For me, I struggle with it, and I find that I need to be in the office minimum 2 days a week, because for exactly the reason Nicola said. You end up waking up, going downstairs, sitting at your kitchen table and cracking on. And for me, having the trip to work, the drive in that takes me most of the time half an hour, or sometimes it takes me an hour, 2 hours, which is when I obviously want to work from home more. But having that time to almost get myself ready for work and think about what my day is going to look like, what have I got on today, I think it helps me massively. But I get, obviously, from a convenience perspective, being at home, being able to nip around the corner to pick our little boy up from nursery, it's great. And you finish work at 5:30, you finish work at 5:30, you don't have to worry about the commute either side of it. There's pros and cons for me personally. Having a hybrid setup, and having the ability to go in 2 or 3 days a week, I think is what suits me best. And I would say that probably suits most of our team best where possible.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's so interesting is how mixed the research is, and how, I think the research that I did a couple of years ago was so telling, because the quantitative, the kind of, Likert scale answers all were very positive. But then when we looked at the qualitative responses, the words that people were using: more overwhelmed, my mental health is suffering, I'm tied to the computer, I'm feeling less physically active. So what I think is so interesting about this whole topic is that even in ourselves, we're confused a little bit about what's best. So if you're managing people from home, what I think I'm trying to say here is, you do need to do some work and have some open and honest conversations about setups, about feeling guilty, and that's one of the things people aren't. It's that shame about how distractions affect them. These are the kind of conversations that we need to have, and how can we encourage people to take breaks and move more? It's so important for our mental health, to not just get up, sit, and then sit.
Yeah, and I think as well what you mentioned about the no one feels comfortable about talking about potentially difficult conversations, or they're often misconstrued over Teams or Slack. We use Slack internally, and it's so true. You could say something that is totally can anyone help me with it, or whatever it was, and the way people will read it or interpret that is totally different to what you meant. If you were in an office environment and you popped your head over the desk and said, why is this not working, or is it's totally different.
Fear in people when they
Why?
read it from
Exactly.
home. Yeah.
People don't want to message, don't feel comfortable messages, especially new members of the team. We're growing. Some of the team, most of the team work from home. They've all started working from home, although we sort of have a semi-compulsory day in the office every other week. And I think that's so important to get people feeling comfortable and talking about raising concerns or suggesting ideas that maybe if they were totally based from home 100% of the time, that they wouldn't feel comfortable in doing. So yeah, I think it's difficult.
So yeah, I mean, listen, I think watch this space, because most of us are hybrid working. The research is inconsistent. Many people do not have ideal setups, and there's a lot of conversation around inequality and home working. So have the conversations, encourage people to manage their time, to not feel guilty and shameful, and to move a bit more, and to limit that techno stress, and to talk about what productivity looks like. You've got to talk about that with different colleagues. What does it look like? And as we said yesterday, it ebbs and flows. So taking the time for these conversations is really beneficial. So I hope that's been helpful. We talked, as I said, on Monday, we talked about burnout, which, I mean, I just literally saw another piece yesterday saying 1 in 5 of us are going to suffer from burnout. Every time I look, there's another alarming statistic. And then yesterday we talked about the problem with work-life balance and what that actually means. And then obviously today we've talked about some of the issues with hybrid working. So these are the issues that are kind of at the top of the agenda for mental health in the workplace right now. So tomorrow we're going to do a little demo of our app and talk about the skills and the things that are needed by employees in order to kind of resist some of these issues and problems that they're facing.
We'll hopefully see you there. Has anyone got any comments or thoughts or anything at all you want to pop in the Q&A or the chat? Feel free to do so now before we stop the recording and log off. Everyone's very quiet.
Well, we will recap on these. They'll come out on LinkedIn. We're going to get them edited and get some snippets on LinkedIn next week. So have a look on our LinkedIn page. And obviously, we've always got webinars ongoing at various points. So have a look out for those as well. And hopefully see you all tomorrow.
Yep. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And
happy
hopefully see you
Wednesday.
tomorrow. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.